will unfold as you walk the way. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on us.
Fresh on me, Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me. Melt me, mold me, fill me, use me. Spirit of the living God, fall afresh on me.
We are a well above average looking group. It's so good to see all of you.
I've missed you.
Yes.
Today's reading is from Acts chapter 15, verses 36 through 41. I apologize for the mispronunciation of the names. After some days, Paul said to Barnabas, "Come, let us return and visit the believers in every city where we proclaim the word of the Lord and see how they are doing." Barnabas wanted to take with them John, called Mark. But Paul decided not to take with them the one who had deserted them in Pamphylia and had not accompanied them in the work. The disagreement became so sharp that they parted ways. Barnabas took Mark with him and sailed away to Cyprus. But Paul chose Silas and set out, the believers commending him to the grace of the Lord. He went through Syria and Cilicia, strengthening the church. May the Lord add a blessing to his students.
So did you have to transpose that to get in the key for the red-shouldered hawk? That was great. Huh? And then maybe the red-shouldered hawk just got the pitch. That was great. The red-shouldered hawk apparently either wants to worship with us or wants us to lose. Yeah, it's probably the latter. Right. It's like, you're too close to my nest, please go away. But we will peacefully coexist for an hour and be on our way. Well, we have been looking over the last couple of weeks and concluding this week with the beginning of the church. And I've even resisted calling it church when I'm talking about what the believers were doing, because they weren't really church yet. They were figuring out what to do. They were believers who were followers of Jesus, and the Spirit was simply compelling them and moving them to do things. And it was sort of like, fixing the landing gear on the plane. You have to do it while you're still in the air, because the landing will be pretty rough otherwise, right? So they were building things as they went, dealing with issues as they came up. And we've looked at how the Spirit pushed them to move out, and they preached the word, and people responded, and they responded by taking care of everyone's need. And we saw it again. We saw it a second time. We saw that every time the Spirit moves, one of the responses, the one that we get recorded for us, is that they made sure there was no physical need among the people who came to believe. So we understand that within the church, as it comes to be, there shouldn't be any suffering, and the church should expand everywhere. And that's where we are now. We last week looked at the fact that there were problems within how to distribute those goods within the church to those who were needy. And it wasn't working real well. And they had to appoint a committee, the first church committee, the deacons. Yeah, the deacons were the first church committee. And they were charged with serving at tables. That's what the word means. They were about serving one another. The first thing the church had to organize was how we're going to take care of one another. So these are important lessons for us as we think about how to be church today. What does it mean to be church and do church in this time, in this place? How do we care for one another? And those internal problems were major and were big, but they didn't stop them from reaching out. The apostle said, we're going to keep preaching. That's why we need deacons to do the caring. And they weren't at odds with each other. They were two pieces working in harmony, progressing, moving toward the goals that God set for them, following the mission that was set before them. And in part of doing that, one of those deacons named Stephen, was arrested and was killed. It's the first martyr of our faith. So things are getting real serious, real fast. We just had deacons, and now one of them has been killed by the authorities. And they were killed at the word of a Pharisee by the name of Saul. And we're going to fast forward to get to chapter 15, where our story picks up today. But you should be familiar, I hope, with what happened in between. Saul was there at the killing of Stephen, ordered it practically. And then we read later how Saul is on the road to Damascus, and he sees a great light, and he's knocked off of his donkey onto the ground, and he hears a voice from heaven saying, "Why are you persecuting me?" And he realizes that Jesus is speaking to him, and that he's got it all wrong. And he does a 180. Here he was a persecutor of the church, and by the time we get to chapter 15, he's a leader. He's the one who's spreading the word. You can imagine what it must have been like struggling in the early gathering of believers at that point. It would have made sense to say, that's it, they're killing us now, we're done. And it's not worth it. But they made up their minds that it was worth it. Can you imagine that what you're doing is so worth it that you will keep going even when they start killing those who belong to your group? That was the commitment. That was how sure they were of what they were doing. That spreading the good news that God loves everyone, that forgiveness is readily available, that God's grace is free, that heaven is here, and that we will demonstrate it by taking care of one another. That simple message was enough to get you killed, but it was also so true that they wouldn't deviate from it. And so they persisted. But true to form, any institution, any gathering is going to have questions. Well, who can join our group and how do you do it? Time for a committee, right? We've got to have a committee and review the Constitution and how we're going to do it. Well, that's not exactly what they did. But they did have councils. They did have gatherings and have conversations, discussions, where they had to make decisions. And the choice was, will we only accept as believers, as part of our group and following, those who are already Jews? Or if they become Jews, so that then they can become Christians? Or can Gentiles, those who aren't Jews at all, can they just join directly? Now this sounds like a church meeting, right? It's a little bit more important than what color we're going to paint the front door or what color the carpet will be, but it's along the same lines of, we got to make a decision. What are we going to do? And think about the things that we anguish over and how important this decision was. And they decided that anybody could join. They decided that even this guy, Paul, which was the name that Saul was going by now after having had his conversion, even he could be part of the group. Now, you can imagine how hard it was to accept him. Here was the definition of enemy, right? This is the guy who will kill you. But now he says, no, I'm on your side. How many people in that group of believers do you think said, yeah, right, buddy? It's a mole, right? He just wants to be on the inside so he can kill us that much more easily. But there was someone who advocated for him, and his name was Barnabas. And Barnabas said, no, this is legit. I've prayed about it. I've seen it. I've heard him. I know that God is behind this. The Spirit is here. He belongs. And so Paul and Barnabas became fast friends. And in fact, they became missionaries. They were the ones that the church sent out to spread the good news. They started traveling, going to other places so that more people would hear. And so as they're deciding who can join the church, lots of people are joining the church. As they're deciding, should we allow this guy who once killed us in, he's out preaching the good news and bringing people in. Things are going swimmingly. Until we read in chapter 13 that Barnabas' cousin, John Mark, was along with him on this missionary journey and decided to go back home. When we get to chapter 15, we see that Paul saw that as desertion. He's not real happy with John Mark after that. Now, they're planning a second trip. That's where the story picks up. We're in chapter 15, and Paul and Barnabas are planning to go out on another missionary trip. And Paul says, or Barnabas says, I want my cousin John Mark to go. And Paul says, if he goes, I'm not going. No, I won't have him on the trip with me. This is the quintessential church problem. It's personalities. It's individuals. It's, I'm going to take my ball and go home. I'm going to take my pledge and leave. Right? My way or the highway. This is where we so often today in the institutional church find our brick walls. And here the church is facing its first dilemma. Paul says no, Barnabas says yes. What are they going to do? Well, we know what they did. They split up. But they didn't quit following their calling. They both went out as missionaries. John Mark went with Barnabas, and Silas went with Paul. Now, in the place of one team, there were two. Now there's twice as much work happening, even though had been this dispute. How often in the history of the church have we seen those kind of disputes over who can come to the table, how we should baptize people, what words we should use for the Lord's Prayer? Should we use the word Lord? How often when we've debated over those things, we've said, fine, we just won't get together anymore. We'll just split up. There was the church I served in Salem, Massachusetts, was born out of a split because they couldn't agree on which direction the deacon should sit during communion. Or so the history says. Yeah, well, no, they didn't have to stand. Do you sit facing the front or do you sit in the front facing the congregation? And one made them look like Presbyterians and the other made them look like Congregationalists, and they were debating that. And it became a zero-sum game. They couldn't compromise. They couldn't, yeah, right, you laugh. You laugh so you don't cry. Because that's the kind of thing that we run up against again and again and again. And I would love to say that the result is all of these denominations, and therefore more good news is being spread. But that doesn't seem to have happened. It seems that we've split up and then nurtured, licked our own wounds, right? And we've nurtured ourselves and isolated, and the good news has been locked up in our divided causes. That's not what happened in the early church. They understood that there was something bigger, something better, something more important going on. Now, I know a few of you are lovers of the beautiful game like I am, but not many. Yeah, that wouldn't be baseball. No, smart aleck. The soccer fan who knows that the beautiful game is soccer. But so I know that maybe some of you missed this event last week, but it's been on the news. I watched it live. It was the most frightening thing. Were you watching the game, Greg? At all? I watched it live. It was the most frightening thing I've ever seen live on television. A Danish player, in Europe, they're contesting the European Championship, right? So all the national teams are playing each other. And last Saturday, Denmark was playing Finland. Denmark and Finland were playing. And near the end of the first half, the ball was near him, but it had nothing to do with play. The star player for Denmark, Christian Eriksen, collapsed on the field with cardiac arrest. Just dropped. It was horrific to watch. And when I could see medics doing CPR on the field, I mean, all I could do was pray. And what was remarkable about all of that, and he has survived. He's doing well, actually. He probably will never play soccer again, which is a small price to pay. But what happened on the field that day was immediately, people became people and did the right thing. I mean, watching what happened there is part of why I think Calvin was wrong, that people are naturally depraved. I think people are naturally good, and we have all these bad layers on top of it because everyone did what was right and his life was saved. The referee stopped the match immediately and called on the medics. The teammates near Eriksen propped him up, made sure his airway was clear, and then they formed a shield around him. They all stood facing out and put their backs to him so that he would have some privacy, the medics could work. When his wife came down to the field, the captain of the team went over to her, and the goalkeeper went over as well, told her he's breathing, and it's going to be okay, and we're there. In fact, the goalkeeper came over and said he's breathing so that she would know, and then he wasn't absolutely sure, so he went back and found out and came back with a report. They took care of one another. And you could hear a pin drop in the stadium. And after a while, all the fans, the Finnish and the Danish fans, started chanting his name. Because everyone understood that life was more important than a game. This was just a game. It was a big, important game, but it was just a game. In fact, even at the next match Denmark played against Belgium, the two sides agreed that at the 10th minute, because Eriksen's number is 10, at the 10th minute, they stopped the play, they kicked the ball out of play, and everybody applauded for a minute. It was simply remarkable. The people figured out what was of most ultimate value. Now, I don't want to say that the work we do as a church is just a game. Because it is more than a game. But some of the things that we concern ourselves over are so minor compared to what matters. And when we look at what we do as a zero-sum game, like there have to be winners and losers, because you can't be a winner if there isn't a loser. If we think that way, that's how we will react. And we will cause more harm than the good that we can create. And we've seen it happen. I don't have to name the stories, and there's no great value in dredging up the past. But we know that these things are true. And we know that it's only getting worse in the world. People don't talk to each other anymore if they're on opposite sides. You immediately think you know what the other person believes as soon as they identify as a Democrat or a Republican or as whatever, right? We seem to think we know from stereotypes what people think. And what worse than that is we have seen leadership in our great nation go to great pains to make sure that the other side doesn't get anything. Like compromise is such a dirty word. Worse yet, not understanding that we elect leaders to serve the common good. We expect them to work things out, to try to make things move along so that life gets a little better. And then they get into their camps and argue with each other and won't give an inch to the other, and then nothing happens. How is that serving any good? We see it happen all around us, and we're so tempted to join in with that. And it starts to feel like it's normal. But we don't have to do that. We can be like the early believers. We can be like Paul and Barnabas and have a personality dispute that might be hard to work out, but we don't give up on each other and we don't write each other off. In 1 Corinthians 9, Paul is writing to the church in Corinth, and he affectionately mentions Barnabas as being worthy of monetary support in his work of proclaiming the gospel. They weren't opposing teams. Barnabas wasn't a loser. They were just doing different things. And Paul tells the church in Corinth, support the work of Barnabas. Matter of fact, in 2 Timothy, Paul writes, get Mark and bring him with you, for he is useful to me for ministry. Get Mark. That one that I thought was so useless, the one who deserted us in Jerusalem, the one that caused the split, get him. He's useful to me. We can minister together. That's the lesson. It's very simple and very, very hard. Because we have to get over ourselves. We have to realize that we're not the center of the universe. That God is. And that we have a mission. And that God has figured out how to use all of us diverse people, knowing that we won't always get along. So sometimes you got to put some over here and some over there because, they need their own sandboxes, right? Some kids just don't play well together in the same sandbox, but you can have two sandboxes and everybody can play. We can and will and do those things, friends. My charge to you. And it is this because I know I'm a short timer. I don't have much time left to say what I think is important to all of you. And here's what I think is most important. Know who you are. Know who God wants you to be. Understand your mission and focus on that. And if someone else sees a way to do that that's different than the way you're doing it, don't look at them, look at the mission. Look at God. Listen for the Spirit's call and movement. Take a breath and know that God is near. And feel the wind and know that God is pushing you to wherever God wants. And trust that. Because God has placed all of you together for a reason. And maybe sometimes the reason is to work out the friction and to learn from it, like Paul and Barnabas did. And more often it's because you each are gifted and are beautiful. Always right. You have a lot to give, with a lot of love to give. And how do I know that? Not just because I've seen it, and I have, and I'm grateful, but because you are filled with God. And God is love. And love is God. And love is the most powerful force in all of the universe. And you're filled with it, and you have that power. Don't waste it. Don't neglect it. Use it powerfully. Serve God.
Thank you.
what's on our hearts. He does not need to hear it from our lips. It is good that we share our joys and concerns so that we know him, and so that we might be mindful and thoughtful in our prayers. So what are the joys and concerns that we bring today? Maybe we have some, and we've gotten the list. Yes.
Some of you may have remembered when we donated money to the Lots Creek School. I wanted to have a joy that Margaret Mills and.
I was going to do this, and I
Okay,
forgot.
all right, I'm trying to talk as loudly.
I know, it's hard.
Some of you may have remembered the times we donated money to the Lots Creek School in Kentucky. Well, a joy today is that Margaret Mills and a group of other children and adults are down in Kentucky working to help the people in Hazard, Kentucky, where the school is, and they'll be there till Friday.
Last night we had a great event called Drag Queen Bingo. And it was basically standing room only. It was sold out. We raised a lot of money, not we, but Jennifer Lipster and her wonderful, lovely family. I just wanted to thank you for organizing what you did. It really turned out wonderful. Do you want to share with everybody how much money? So yes, as Paula said, it was standing room only. I didn't think about it that way, but we did raise a little over $1,500. I'm not sure of the exact amount, but yeah, it was a great event, and we had a great crowd from different people in the community. We had people from Old South. We had people that from the LGBTQ community that were there, and it was a very good event. And thank you to everybody that helped with it and donated. I'm sorry to monopolize, but the gal that heads up the LGBTQ plus allies for Lake County, which is the charity that benefited from the donations yesterday, she told a wonderful story about the people here at Old South, and she said that she was the one that came and did the safe space training, and she said that in nearly every class that she teaches, she mentions Old South and how warm and wonderful the people that were there. They asked all the right questions, and she was deeply grateful for the support that she got from our members.
This one's for from Dina. Prayers of joy for son Taylor and wife Jessica. They are expecting their second child. Pray for successful pregnancy.
It's not known to us before.
My brother, my oldest brother, Jim, was put into hospice last night, so it's that time, so pray for his safe return.
Speaking of that, I think we should remember Pat and Ed Eckert. Ed is getting some hospice help these days, and if anybody can, I think Pat would appreciate somebody visiting just to say hello. So let's not forget that.
I was told, oh, yeah, and I was told that Phyllis Smith fell, but is okay, and Carl Messner also took a fall, but is okay. So obviously on the mend, we prayed for.
First one is to pray for Deb Harmon, who is a daughter of close friends of the Prances, who is a mother of 3 and dealing with cancer. And the next one I have is from Michelle Jones, friend Ruth, and her husband Bill. He was in a head-on motorcycle collision this week and is currently in critical condition in the ICU after having his leg amputated below the knee. He is also dealing with other significant injuries. Another one is prayers and healing for all involved in the tragedy at Wilton Manor's Stonewall Pride Parade in Florida. A truck drove into the gay men's chorus at the beginning of the parade. One person was killed, another injured, and the driver was also a member of the gay men's chorus. They're saying they think it was an accident, but it's still under investigation. And lastly, prayers that with Juneteenth as a federal holiday, we as a country can continue down the road towards true equality and justice for all, not just symbolic gestures.
I'd also like to ask for prayers for my mom who has entered into hospice care.
Joy's and or prayers with fathers. It's Father's Day. Did you wish your father happy Father's Day? Yeah. Yeah, there's water down there. Let's keep you and the water separated. How's that? Excellent. Wow. Uh-huh.
Trust and never give up.
Get the benediction now. Don't they say never work with children and animals? Because you just always get upstage. That's how it works. Thank you. That was wonderful. Trust and never give up. Trust and never give up. We could carve that in the wall. Just remember that. Thank you. Well, let us take this moment where we had joys and had hardships and heartaches, and know that our God holds all of us. And let us be still enough that we might sense the presence of our God, the stirring and the movement of God, the voice of God answering these our prayers. So let us listen, breathe, know that God is as we enter the silence. O holy bringer of life, we praise you. We praise you with humble hearts, mindful of our place which is tiny and short and small in this creation, yet is sublimely, exquisitely blessed by your presence, by your attention and your concern. Our minds can barely grasp the magnitude of that sort of love. That you who created all that is, who have been present before there was time, care about each and every one of us, know each and every one of us, and attend to our needs, to our desires, and that you choose
make us whole, filled with joy. Help us with our struggles with that. For we suffer. We hurt with loved ones who are physically in pain this day, who are nearing the end of their journey on this earth. It brings us sadness. It breaks our heart. Comfort us that we might continue to be your healing presence in those situations. And thank you for the gift of new life and new paths and new adventures. Thank you that we are capable of serving you and that we find joy in that service, especially when we see good being done. Help us to trust. Help us to never give up. Remind us that you know what it is to never give up. For you have not given up on us or anyone. And you showed us that by coming through your powerful spirit to move in human flesh. In the man who knows Jesus, who not only showed us the way, but showed us that he was the way, that he is the way, and left for us a prayer that binds us together with people of all time and of all places who know and worship you. Words we share together now as we pray. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
You may have picked up in the news this week that there is a group of Christians who are once again choosing to be gatekeepers about who comes to the table that Christ sets before us. It's not anything new, and they're trying to use that to further what they think is important. That's not how Jesus did. Jesus invited even Judas to the table. Even the one who was about to betray him. Jesus invited Peter to the table, one who was about to deny him. And knowing those things, he still said, "Come and eat. You are welcome at this table. This is the table of God's grace. This is the table of blessing and abundance. And it is open to absolutely everyone." What happens in this ritual, in this sacrament, is between you and God. It's very personal and very communal. We do it together. And so we are united in this place, knowing that we're not the only ones. Even in this moment, there are those online who are going to join us in sharing in these elements And there are Christians in other places, even right now, partaking of these gifts. And there are those who will partake later and partook before. The gifts are here and common for a reason, to remind us that every time we break bread and every time we drink the cup, whatever the bread is, whatever the cup is, wherever we are, whoever we're with, we know that Christ is present. Because that's what he told us when he took that bread and asked God's blessing upon it and broke it. Because he said this was his body. This bread now reminds us that Jesus' broken body is with us when we come to the table. And after the meal, he took the cup and lifting it up like he would be lifted up so soon. He asked God's blessing upon this and then told them of the sacrifice he was about to make, saying that this cup represented his blood, the blood of a covenant, and that covenant was for forgiveness. These are gifts that we all can and should and must receive. And so for them to be holy for us, we simply need to ask God bless it, to make sure that we're aware of what these gifts are. So holding the elements that you have, whether here or online, whether now or perhaps even watching later, know that you may hold whatever it is that you are going to put into your body. Pray that God will make holy these elements, these simple bits of food that nourish us physically. Oh God, may we understand the spiritual nourishment that is your gift to us at this table. Friends, these are the gifts of God for the people of God, and all are the people of God. So come to this feast and rejoice. Let us partake now in the feast. Oh God, we rejoice that we have been invited to the table and had a meal with you. Fill us now with continual joy that as we go to other meals and other places and other times, we will know your presence, know your forgiveness, know the power of your love and spirit within us. Amen. Announcements. Sorry. Oh, and you? Either come up or we'll pass the mic. Yeah, so we can hear.
Okay, I think everybody knows, but next week is Ian's last week here, and we will be having a farewell party for him right after service. We're asking you to make some desserts or food for it. Peggy is collecting a list and organizing it. I know I saw her here before.
It's on top.
Oh, okay. We're all set. Okay.
So bring your appetite.
Yes, so yes, bring your appetite. Please come and stay after the service. There'll also be a special service for Ian's farewell. And who is coming from Living Waters? I know Nairi couldn't come.
Ruth, whose last name I forget.
Ruth,
That's quite a name.
right.
Yeah, I don't recall her last name. She's on the committee on ministry.
Okay.
I can't remember.
Well, hopefully all of you can make it. Thank you. And I know Don has announcements. Anybody else? Oh, you have announcements.
I would like to thank all of you for supporting me in Boy Scouts. For me going to Vermont and New Mexico, I was able to pay for over half of my trip and my dad's trip, thanks to you guys.
Well, first I wanted to say I know I'm not sure exactly what the sermon is next week, but today's sermon really hit home, and I hope that we listen to that and use that as something to remember as we move into the period where we're going to have an interim minister. And the good news is we are going to have an interim minister. This last week or so, the deacons have interviewed a lady that we think is going to really work out well. She lives locally in Cuyahoga Falls. Her name is Reverend Karen Bruno, in case any of you might know that name. And she will be starting with us July 1st and preach on July 4th. So we are good, and thanks to Gretchen. Gretchen will be preaching on July 18th because Reverend Bruno will be attending Synod, the UCC Synod, for the week of July 11th to the 18th. And it's virtual. Well, it's virtual, but she said it was 6 hours a day Zoom meetings for all week, and thought maybe she might not have time to prepare. So she's not as experienced. She doesn't wait to the last minute like some, you know. But anyway, I wanted to share the good news that we have, through a lot of study and discussion and meeting with different candidates, we do have an interim pastor that will serve with us for 1 to 2 years, or however long it takes before we find a permanent pastor. So that's my good news for today.
Hey, John, can you grab the mic?
Mike.
You want the mic?
Grab the mic. I can shout. And I told him, I gave him a heads up that I needed it.
Oh, I didn't. I'm sorry.
See, Don, now you understand what it's like down here. You can't see anybody.
There you go.
It's like the heavenly post up there. And then it's just backlit, you can't see a thing.
That's the story you're saying.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Just an announcement from Gina. The truck is coming for Lynch's on next Friday, the 25th. They'll need help packing anytime next weekend. And she didn't include this, but I'm assuming need help loading as well. So.
The announcement is that really that Gina and I don't coordinate well enough. Well, I was going to say next, so she just didn't know that. Yeah, even if just for information, so people know. Yeah, we are moving using U-Pack, so we're going to have a trailer dropped off in our driveway on Friday. Not sure quite what time of the day it will show up, and we have it for 3 business days. And since Saturday and Sunday are not business days, we will have it for 5 days if need be. But as soon as it's filled, then we call them and they come with the truck and they take it away and get it on its way to Maine. Hopefully it'll get there sooner than later, but it could take a while, which is part of this dilemma. So we're prepared to camp out at home here because we will close on our house here on Wednesday the 30th. And we close on the house in Maine on Friday the 2nd. So we'll travel in between, but we'll camp out in whichever house doesn't have things in it. You know what I mean? We're just gonna have an air mattress and folding tables and things like that. But because we do have 5 days to fill the truck, I'd like to fill it sooner than later. And if we haven't had a chance to socialize and chat and things, you're all welcome to come. Help move furniture would be wonderful. Chatting would be equally wonderful. As long as the furniture still getting moved. I mean, it's like, but we should have time to get things done. Our garage looks like the inside of the trailer at the moment, ready to move up the ramp and on there. So a little at a time, many hands. We would love the assistance and love to see folks and have that as our farewell. In the middle, of course, we'll be here for church, so we'll get to fuel up on finger foods as well. Are there other announcements then? Are we good to go? I'm really pleased that I know that the deacons are breathing a sigh of relief because I know there's been a lot of work going into determining who would be the interim. It's not just as simple as hiring someone who's available. It's knowing what you want and beginning that quest. And interestingly, I don't think I've had much encounters with Karen. I know most every clergy person in the association and throughout the United Church of Christ being around for a while. So I don't need to know her to know that you're your work is going to be good with her.
I would just add, Ian, she's been ordained for many years, 1987, I believe. And she spent a lot of time doing hospice work and social work. But she has been a preacher, a minister at churches. So that may be, she's relatively new to the interim role, but she's got a lot of experience, and she's going to be somebody that is focused on care and getting to know people. So you might be getting a call from her, some of us, some of you, because she's anxious to get to start knowing people. So
It will be a good journey. I know it will, because the journey is always good if you make a journey. If you draw in and don't choose to move out, that's what you'll get. And if you choose to pull up the welcome mat and take care of yourself, be prepared for what comes next. Because vitality comes by reaching out, by moving out, by welcoming, by putting the welcome mat out and not knowing who's going to come. Trusting that the Spirit will bring the people who you didn't know you needed to be there. And I'm sure that's pretty good against that. And we'll help you wherever you choose. But it's all up to everyone to follow the leading of God's Spirit. So do that, whatever that means, wherever that takes you, starting right this very minute. As you leave this time, this space, wherever you are, whether you're online, whether it's now or later, whether you're here in the beauty of this space, know that God's Spirit has moved among you, has moved within you, and like taking a breath, there comes a time to exhale, to move out, and sail on that wind of the Spirit. And that's the time we come to now. To go forth from this space, this time, and give glory to God the Creator. May our Creator God, who knows even the sparrow that falls, lift you on gentle breezes that you might soar and screech like red-shouldered hawks in the dell. And grant you the gift, bless you the gift of vision, that you might see where He is God wants you to go. And give glory to the Christ who comes to you and challenges you in the form of the least, the last, and the lost, this day and every day. May Christ bless you with the gift of tears, that you might shed them with those who are in pain and those who are in joy. And give glory to God's Spirit, wild, untamed, untethered, wild as any wild goose. May this wild goose Spirit of our God lead you into those places where you may not go on your own, and bless you with a touch of foolishness. Trust. The love of God be with you all those who you love, and all those who none but God loves. Now and until that day of God's judgment and justice will roll down like waters, and peace will blossom among all the peoples.
I already had a had an accident, but like it already traumatized me. But yeah, car. I had to almost in the car with me. And the person on the other side of the road, I was turning left. Spain yesterday. Y'all back to work and they let you work from home for a while.
You know, everybody kind of rotates, so sometimes, you know, I would go in and, you know, a lot of my team would be vice versa. I go in mostly to FaceTime with people and my manager if I have our status. He wasn't gonna be there in Texas. They're only coming over.
Right.
The business is.
Our daughter works for, is, you know, HR manager.
Okay.
And so they're not thinking back until September.
Yeah, we don't. I think the business side is going to be more. It's interesting. So, my area supports finance area primarily, and so they business always value. You got to be there on site. You never do a close like that. Well, what they've been doing it for over a year now. Like the one manager over there, she worked with Kalamazoo and yeah, so yeah, let's see.
So, yes, that's the school, and our first event is to come in July, so we're going to be in person.
Okay, cool. Yeah, my son is been attending late and went to Capitol and be a lawyer and that was but they were in, yeah, he's like, how do you feel about this? Well, you're productive, contributing adults, whatever makes you happy, it's fine with me. So, but I got a chuckle because, you know, it's made fun of Lake Windsor. That's where I started. So it's my Indian. It's a Lake Erie. But yeah, his classes have been in person this last term, and I think the first term before.
Yeah.
Prior to that, I took either on.
Yeah.
He was kind of a meltdown. He's like, we were in New York when they started closing the schools down in Ohio.
Yeah.
And he was just totally thrown off. He has typically classifies as special needs, but it's like a very high functional autism. And so well, the instructions needs like where like somehow the airplane mode button or switch got turned on. I couldn't get it off. I'm thinking, okay, I know I've had this happen at work or at home or whatever. I'm like, there's got to be a button.
Yeah.
And finally, it's like you can do stuff. So you get put a different material. It's like
difference. Yeah. So that, yeah.
Well, it's good. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. So PACE for the undergraduate and graduate school this past spring was hybrid. So some people were in class and highly spaced and mass, and then some people were home. So you had to do all this stuff on the computer anyway, right in front of the class. You know, so.
I'm always
so it's a difference. You can see some of the people in person, some of the people on the screen. You know, but so it worked out okay. It worked out okay. But they said they're going to go. Yeah, we'll be just all full person for the undergraduate and graduate school.
Okay.
So,
Awesome.
So we'll see how it. Hopefully, it all stays safe and things.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
we still have to do attest, what they call attestations. We have to every day. We have to say, are you coming to campus? And if it's no, they say fine. If it's yes, then you have to answer all of those.
Okay.
Do you have a?
Yeah, we have to do a
you're gonna be on campus and things like that, so. And then for a year, we've had testing, so once a week, if you were gonna be on campus, you had to be tested once a week. And that was just for the contact tracing. So
Okay.
they kept the infection rate on Case campus, like 0.1% or something like that, you know.
And were there were
really
kids
super
actually
low.
living there?
Yeah, there were some kids in the dorms. Yeah, there's a bunch of international students that are in the dorms, and then kids from other parts of the country that, you know.
I can sit for a while, it's hard to get up.
But yeah, so anyway, but yeah, it'll be fun to get back to being in person and things. So
I told somebody when all this started, I'm like, oh, my mother had us on training for this years ago. And my dad too. And it's like, it's amazing how many people don't work their hands at work. Like at work, like people are like, dude, don't shake that person's hand at all. Never shake their hands. And you know what's funny is, so we were like kind of, it started out as like a fun thing. It's like, oh, that's kind of.
Nick, are you all disconnected? Should
I'm not disconnected.
yeah, so we were talking, sorry.
That's all right.
After comparing notes, it was like, well, women don't work their hands at work, and the men are. I'm like, I'm shocked,
I know,
but
and
at
I
the same
know,
time,
that's
it's like,
right,
with,
that's
I mean, not just because of women, but, you know.
I know,
You know, it's-
so and yeah, and with all of that and the mask during the you know, during the flu season, it's like we had hardly any cases. It's like, so how people
Well, stay home if you're sick. That's like the biggest thing.
Yeah,
Stay home if you're sick.
yeah.
Keep bugging me,
Yeah. Once you disconnect.
Yeah, I just gotta shut down. Good talking to you. Thank you.
Okay.